Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Unraveling Politics. This is a show where we discuss the political news of the day, and I provide my analysis in a way that everyone can understand. So, we have a hefty dose of politics to talk about today. I was originally not going to make an episode right after the debate last night, but I decided that there was too much that happened, and instead, I'm going to release an episode today, and then on Monday we're going to have a special episode they originally planned to release later in the week, or later in the month. So stay tuned for that. As for this episode, we will be talking about the debate. In case you did not watch it, here are some of my conclusions. President Biden came off as weak, gaspy, and doddering. He came off as someone who was very tired, voice was very raspy. Democrats are in a deep panic right now, and they're worried about down-ballot races, and they now are worried that Trump will actually be elected president. I would say Trump was the winner of the debate, even though he said many things that were not true. Typically, presidents tend to struggle on their first debate. I thought CNN's Van Jones put this in a good way. He said that it might be time for Democrats to consider a different way forward, which I think we all know what that is code for. The Democratic convention is in August, and if Biden steps aside, the DNC will have to decide a new candidate. Forcing Biden out is basically impossible because Biden is the nominee chosen by the voters. If the Democrats try to remove him without his permission, that will be frustrating the will of the people, and it would be very undemocratic. So, the CNN debate was hosted by Jake Tapper and Dana Bash. From what I understood at the beginning, no notes were allowed, and neither were props, but Biden seemed to have notes. I don't know what's going on there. When I was going into the debate, I was thinking, is there anything left for the candidates to say? Probably not. We kind of know these two candidates already. We've known Trump for 8 years. Biden was president for 4 years, vice president for 8 years, and in the Senate for a billion years. I noticed immediately Biden was doddering as he walked up to the stage. He looked weak. I got the sense that Biden was not going to do very well. The first topic was the economy. Biden blamed Trump right out of the gate. He mentioned the bleach comment. Biden sounded really, really raspy. He did get better toward the middle of the debate, but the opening part, if all you saw was the opening, you would have been like, this guy cannot be president. Biden said that Trump didn't do much as president, which I have to agree. He did not do as much. And Trump said that the tariffs won't cost us anything, the Trump tariffs. And this is also not true. The tariffs are going to be passed down to all of us. They have been, and we have been paying that with higher prices. Whether or not that's worth it or not, I have my own opinions. It depends, but that's something to consider. And Trump had defended tax cuts and deficit spending. So Trump increased the deficit by $8.4 trillion when he was president, mostly because of COVID. If you don't include COVID, it was a couple of trillion. When Trump said that we were ready to begin paying down the deficit right before COVID came, which is definitely not true. And Biden wants to tax billionaires, and that will raise $500 billion over 10 years. However, this is $50 billion a year. That's going to put a small dent in the deficit. And then this is where I thought Biden was weakest. He was making a statement, and then he ended with, "We beat Medicare," and then the moderator cut him off, and that was the end of his 2 minutes. So that was probably like the end of that was probably like the end. Like, if we had just ended, we could have just ended there, and I don't think we would have missed anything else. I'll play that clip for you right now.
President Biden, I want to give you an opportunity to respond to this question about the national debt.
He had the largest national debt of any president in a 4-year period, number one. Number two, that $2 trillion tax cut benefited the very wealthy. What I'm going to do is fix the tax system. For example, we have 1,000 billionaires in America. And what's happening? They're in a situation where they, in fact, pay 8.2% in taxes. If they just paid 24%, 25%, either one of those numbers, they'd raise $500 billion, I should say, in a 10-year period. We'd be able to wipe out his debt. We'd be able to help make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our healthcare system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID. Excuse me, with dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death.
As you can see, that was pretty bad. Trump didn't have any major blow-ups like that, but I do think he had some weak moments, and we'll get into that in a bit. Trump, you could see his America First agenda was pretty visible. As for abortion, this was Biden's strong suit. This is where he could have delivered. Trump agrees with the Supreme Court about the abortion pill decision, which we talked about on the show before. And he believes in the exceptions, but he also told people to follow their heart. So he said he understood if people didn't believe in the exceptions. And Trump said the country is coming together on abortion, which I guess in a way the country is coming together on abortion, supporting it. So that is true in some ways. And then Biden, he did something pretty nasty. He compared abortion to civil rights, which I've always hated that, especially when it happens more on the right when they compare it to abortion to slavery. It was pretty disgusting. I did not like that. It turned me off. And I would think most people probably wouldn't have noticed it, but I definitely did. Biden was also asked about abortion limits. This is where he should have said, very clearly, he should have said, we don't support, us as Democrats, we do not support abortions after whatever the threshold would be. Most abortions happen in the first trimester, so this is a non-issue. But instead, he dodged the question. He said then he answered, he said, we are not for late-term abortions. However, he did that after dodging it for a minute or two. And then he turned it on Trump by screaming about a national abortion ban, which Trump has said he would not support. He wants to leave it toward the states. Then we move to immigration. Biden blamed Trump for sinking the bipartisan border bill, which we talked about, I think, twice on the show already. And he said child separation increased under Trump, which did happen. But then again, I expected Trump to say, who built the cages, Joe, like he did in 2020. And Biden also mentioned the emergency asylum shutdown, which we mentioned on the show previously, where once the number of people claiming asylum rose above a certain level, they would shut it down. And that is currently in effect. And then Trump said people are being released from prisons into the country. I've seen no evidence for this. And then Trump was asked about the largest mass deportation effort in American history. He said he would do that. He did not answer the question. And that's something I think a lot of people would have wanted to know. That's something I would have liked to see more clarification on. So then we had a moment here that I thought was pretty interesting. If I can, I'm going to play a clip of it. It was about the losers and suckers comment. It was kind of where Biden got somewhat animated. It was about, he was talking about his son, which is he does all the time, where he said where he felt he was defending his son. Let me play that for you right now if I can.
My son spent a year in Iraq, living next to one of those burn pits, came back with stage 4 glioblastoma. I was recently in France for D-Day, and I spoke all about those heroes that died. I went to the World War I cemetery he refused to go to. He was standing with his 4-star general, and he told me, he said, I don't want to go in there because they're a bunch of losers and suckers. My son was not a loser, was not a sucker. You're the sucker. You're the loser.
And Trump said that he lied and that did not happen, which is true, that did not happen. Well, I guess nobody knows for sure, but many have said that President Trump, did not say that about the World War I veterans. You could hear Biden was very angry. Then Trump brought up the laptop, which felt like a rerun of 2020. Then the war in Ukraine. This should have been a strong suit for Biden. Another one. Trump was asked, are Putin's terms acceptable? Trump deflected at first, but then he said the terms were not acceptable. What are Putin's terms? Putin wants all the land he currently occupies in Ukraine, and he wants Ukraine to drop its bid to join NATO. So Trump said that was not acceptable. Then he shifted and blamed Biden for Afghanistan. He would not have invaded if Trump was president. That's what Trump said. And he also wants NATO to pay more. Trump said he will settle the war before he becomes president on January 20th as president-elect. I don't know how he's going to do that. He's not going to tell us, which makes sense because I guess you wouldn't want to leak your strategy out to the whole world. And then Biden clarified that we did not give $200 billion to Ukraine. We gave $200 billion worth of weapons, which is slightly different. Still, we're giving them free stuff. Not a lot of people support that, but we don't send them money for the most part. Instead, we pay American companies to send them weapons. As for Israel, he was asked how the war would end. Biden said Hamas is the only one who wants the war to continue, which has contradicted what he has said previously. I think even in the last episode, or maybe the one before, Biden has said that Netanyahu seems to want the war to continue for political purposes, which is definitely, I can pretty much guarantee that is true. And then Trump said that Biden's like a Palestinian, except he's not liked. And Trump was asked if he would support an independent Palestinian state, which he said he may support one, which wasn't very clear. And then Trump was asked about January 6th. This should have been really strong for Biden. This should have been probably his top issue, maybe even better than abortion. Trump brushed off the questions about worries he'll let this happen again if he loses. But then Trump kind of took it home when he cited that Nancy Pelosi in an interview said, "I take full responsibility." And this is true. Trump was right. Nancy Pelosi took full responsibility for what happened on January 6th. Biden brought up Nancy Pelosi said, "I take responsibility, not full responsibility." Biden brought up that Trump is a convicted felon, which, to be honest, I had forgotten that Trump was a convicted felon until he mentioned that. And Trump actually did nod during that. I thought that was really interesting. Biden asked if Trump denounced the January 6th protesters. He asked him directly, and Trump, of course, that's not how this debate was set up, so Trump didn't answer. Trump was asked if he'll go after Biden if he wins, and Trump said he'd go after him by being a successful president, which is sort of a non-answer. And then also Trump brought up the fact that Hunter was a convicted felon, and he said he did nothing wrong. And then Biden brought up the civil cases and the sex cases with the porn star. Trump nodded slightly, and then he denied it. Biden then asked one of Trump, why did some of Trump's former members in his administration not endorse him? And Trump didn't answer the question, which was, as I said, how the debate was designed. It was not one of those question and answers directly from the candidates. But needless to say, Trump did not fire back anything about that. Then they moved to black voters. Trump, I believe Biden went first, because Biden was asked, "You haven't delivered," or "What have you done to bring them on side?" Biden has proposed a racist $10,000 tax credit for black families. If you can't give it to just one group of people, if you're going to do a tax credit for black families who want to buy a home, if you're going to do it for one group of people, you got to do it for everybody. There's no way that would pass constitutional muster. And Trump cited that the reason for black family struggles is black and Hispanic jobs have been taken by illegal immigrants. That's kind of his thing. And then Biden blamed Trump on inflation for his pandemic malfeasance, which I thought was really confusing. But one thing I want to mention that Trump said is that Biden's Green New Scam has hurt Americans. This Green New Scam was never passed. The Green New Deal was never passed. It was voted on, but nobody voted for it. Seriously, it got 0 votes. All right. So then he was asked about climate change. Trump ignored those questions. And Trump said we had H2O.
We had H2O. We had the best numbers ever. And we were using all forms of energy, all forms, everything. And yet, during my 4 years, I had the best environmental numbers ever.
I thought that was the most bizarre moment from him of the night, but then again, Trump had been debating a normal person, then I think that would have been more in the attention, but instead he was against Biden, and Biden had so many problems that I don't think people actually noticed. So, by this point in the debate, Biden was gaining a little bit of steam. He wasn't quite as bad as he was at the beginning, but the damage was already done. Anyway, Trump referred to the First Step Act. And then he actually referenced that he worked with Tim Scott. And that's kind of when I was thinking, would this be when he would announce Tim Scott as vice president? And no announcement was made, which was a good thing. I think if Trump had mentioned his vice president at the debate, those headlines would have overtaken the headlines of Biden's bad performance. So I think holding off was a good thing. Biden said that Trump didn't do a damn thing about climate change and for the environment, which is basically true. A lot of environmental regulations were rolled back during the Trump administration. So needless to say, that was a little bit disappointing from those two candidates. Now, Social Security, there's a big question. How to keep it solvent? In 10 years, it's going to go bust. Well, not the whole program, but it's going to go insolvent. Biden wants to make the wealthy pay more by raising taxes, by abolishing the cap, or at least raising the cap. Trump had not said nothing. He didn't have anything to respond to that. Then we talked about childcare. But I mean, we were supposed to talk about childcare, is what I mean. Trump then, for some bizarre reason, said that he would. They kind of started delving into overall economic issues, and Trump, for multiple times, said that he didn't want to waste our time on this debate. He would rather be somewhere else. He wouldn't have run if Biden was such a bad president. He wouldn't have run, or if he wouldn't have run if Biden was such a good president. And Biden, of course, said Trump was the worst president according to 159 scholars. Personally, I don't really care what 159 scholars. I don't care what a million scholars say. It doesn't matter what they think. It's what ultimately matters is what the American people think. And I would not say that Trump was the worst president. I don't think really any serious person would argue that. Clearly, there are worse presidents, probably like Herbert Hoover or maybe James Buchanan. I could understand you ranking him at the bottom, near the bottom, but not at the bottom. And then, of course, this was kind of funny. Trump said that Biden will raise taxes. Biden said that Trump has raised taxes on the middle class, and both of those statements are false. And, of course, on opioids, Trump said he cut border crossings. Everything for him kind of goes back to the border. And he would free Evan Gershkovich from Russia as president-elect. Then we moved on to AIDS. This was kind of like the big thing. Everyone was like, I don't know. Biden was asked first. He deflected, and he talked about the overall country, saying, name a country that wouldn't switch with us, which I think is a good point. He's saying that our country is well off, and that there's no country in the world that would not want to be us, which I think is actually a really good point. And it's a shame that Biden didn't drive that home a bit more. Trump says that he feels as good as he did 20 to 30 years ago. That's probably a stretch. And this is where Trump did get a little bit personal. I thought, to be honest, Trump had the balls to tell the President of the United States directly to his face that he was basically weak and incompetent. That's something that I think, I get this is politics and this is a rough game, but that was really aggressive. And this was actually at the beginning of the debate, that comment. If I can find it, I'll share it with you, but I probably won't be able to find it. He got really personal, and I think the personal stuff is what a lot of people don't like. I think if Trump had critiqued Biden, which he did, check, and then offered an optimistic vision of the country, people would have respected that. But instead he didn't. He just kept going and going and going. I think they want him to be the optimist. They want Trump to be the optimist in politics. Optimistic about the world, optimistic about the country, optimistic about the economy, and optimistic about the power of politics. And I think he really could have done that. We're not going to get it from Biden. I was hoping to get it from Trump. Well, not really, because I knew we weren't going to get it, but that would have been nice. Alrighty. Then Trump was asked about the election, if he'd accept it. Trump kind of punted it, and then eventually answered and said yes, he would if it was fair, which of course is up to his own opinion. Trump did condemn political violence, and multiple times Trump, as I said he'd rather be somewhere else. And that he said that Trump's conviction, his own convictions, has driven his numbers up, which is somewhat true. I definitely among Republican voters. And this is kind of where Biden said that the 2020 election was not stolen. There's no evidence of that, which Biden is correct. Then we got to the closing statements. Biden in his closing statements faltered a little bit. He said, let's keep going. He pushed for tax fairness, he wanted to lower prescription drug prices, and he wanted to bring down inflation. And then Trump said that Biden does nothing. He backed on immigration. He said America was weak on the world stage and that Biden didn't deliver in 3 years. And then the camera panned out a bit. They both kind of stood there for a while, and then eventually the camera faded away, and then you could see Joe Biden walked up to Joe Biden. They probably had some sort of conversation, and then Trump walked off the stage. So there was no handshake after the debate, which I don't think anybody was expecting. And that is pretty much it. And then that kind of gets back to where I started about my conclusions. So that is what we have. My predictions for the future, this is going to be a tough one because a lot of people their instinct would think, oh, well, Biden's going to plummet in the polls. I wouldn't necessarily say that. He's probably going to take a small hit, at least in the short term. And this could definitely hurt Democrats down ballot. And this will probably have to be something we'll have to watch and I'll have to update you on later in the future. Another thing that we need to know is, can Biden be replaced at the convention? I talked about this a little bit earlier. The answer is basically no. If Biden either drops dead or just walks away from the presidency, he will still be the nominee. Or I assume he's going to stay as president. If he walks away from the nomination, there's nothing that we can do. The Democratic Party will have to pick a new nominee, and there's not a lot of time to do it. The convention is in August. Luckily for them, the Republican convention comes first. And unfortunately, with Democrats, there is no obvious successor. Kamala Harris is even more unpopular than Biden is himself. She's deeply unpopular. It would be very awkward to have somebody else usurp Kamala Harris to become president, even if that's whether it be Gavin Newsom or a governor like J.B. Pritzker, or let's see who else, something like Gretchen Whitmer. Very awkward. Or even Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania, although he's not being floated. I think Shapiro would be a good president, but it's a little too early to do that. So that kind of leaves us with, I hate to be like this, we don't really know what's going to happen next. This is definitely bad for Biden. Democrats need to work on what to do forward. They're in a tough spot. My advice to them would be to stick with Biden. I think there's really no other option here. They can try and say just Biden had an off night. They should challenge Trump to another debate. If I was the Trump team, I would say no more debates, we're done. The American people saw what they needed to see. Doing another debate just risks Biden having a better night. He does seem to have good nights occasionally, but the Trump team should not do another debate. They should say, this is it. We saw what we need to see. If the vice presidents want to debate, that's fine. But no, this should be it. The Biden campaign wanted this debate. They shouldn't have called it. This was a terrible idea. And instead, they risked everything they had. There was a chance that he could have won. And instead, they threw that away. There's still a chance he could win, but it's a lot lower than it was before. Anyway, that is all my feedback for today. Thank you for listening. We will be back on Monday with a special episode, and it's going to be about the Trump campaign's stances on the issues. Then we're going to have one on Biden and then another one on RFK. So I don't know when the other two are going to be released, but on Monday, July 1st, we're going to have that episode about Trump's, I believe it's going to be on it's going to be on July 1st, the Trump episode. And then we're going to go from there. If any major news breaks between now and then, of course I'll update you as things happen. Anyway, thank you for listening, and hope you have a great day. Bye.